What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
Does your book, film, resource, product, or business change people's lives for the better? Hi, I'm Jackie Lappin, founder of Conscious Media Relations, a unique boutique PR firm that helps you connect with your mind, body, spirit, and conscious lifestyle audience in a big way. We reach 3,500 specialty media and all the key mainstream outlets in the United States. I invite you to explore our radio media tour that connects to 2,600 personal growth radio shows. There is just nothing else like it. Come check out our website and read our rave reviews.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show. And I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Robbie Holz, who is an internationally respected healer and speaker. She is an author of the award-winning book Secrets of Aboriginal Healing and her memoir Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening. Now, whilst on her quest for wellness, Robbie met Dr. Gary Holz, an award-winning physicist, psychoneuroimmunologist, and alternative healer. Now, Gary taught her the Aboriginal healing techniques he'd learned from his encounter with remote outback Australian Aboriginal tribespeople, chronicled in the award-winning memoir Secrets of Aboriginal Healing. Now, the two eventually married and in 1995 started their healing practice centered on Aboriginal healing principles, quantum physics, and psychoneuroimmunology, using the mind to heal the body. Now, sadly, Gary passed away in 2007, but Robbie continues the work and has helped many people successfully restore their health. Robbie Holz, welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you on. It really is. Very interesting story. I got, like I do with every show, I get to just recap on today's show that's coming up just before I come on air, and it's a really interesting story. This is. I think the best place for us to start off here is to sort of tell us a bit about yourself prior to being diagnosed. What were you doing? What was going against your body? What signs were you not listening to?
A lot. It takes a lot to almost die twice. I was a court stenographer. The little machines. I don't know if they have those in England or not. And I was really putting in way too many hours, and my body was telling me too much, but I was ignoring that. And I ended up having a delivery with my son, and it was a rough delivery, and they ended up giving me tainted blood that had hepatitis C. So the hepatitis C almost killed me. And back then, they didn't even have a name for it. They called it non-A, non-B hepatitis. And if they didn't have a name, they didn't have a cure. And so then they put me on an experimental treatment, and that almost killed me. So I survived almost dying twice. But it really got my attention. At this point, Kevin, I was in such bad shape. The doctors had nothing for me, but I had such severe damage from the experimental treatment that I couldn't remember what I was saying. I didn't remember whether the tag went in the front or the back of the jeans. It was, I couldn't get out of bed for about 6 to 9 months. And I was determined to stay alive because I had this little boy. And so that's when I started trying to find answers outside of Western medicine, and ended up healing what the doctor said was incurable at the time. I ended up healing hepatitis C, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and severe brain damage.
So just tell us how you met Gary then. Now that wasn't, as far as I understand now, that wasn't in Australia. This was in the US.
Right. This was in the US. This was back in, I met Gary in 2001. And it was at a party where there were a lot of people in the metaphysical area, a lot of fascinating authors at this big 4th of July party. And when I met him, apparently he saw past lives flash across my face. None of this was happening for me. I didn't see any of that. But when I met him, he saw all the past lives sort of flash on my face, and it really freaked him out. But it also brought to his awareness, this is someone that I've had some lives with, and somebody I need to find out more about.
What was you doing at that party?
What was he doing?
No, what was you doing?
Oh, I had become disabled from my career as a court stenographer, and I had rehabilitated myself and healed myself, and I wanted to go into the role of healing animals. So this party had a lot of animal communicators and a lot of animal healers, and so I was really interested in soaking up all of that knowledge.
Had you healed your hepatitis?
I had healed the hepatitis at this point, and the fibromyalgia. I was still dealing a little bit with healing the fibromyalgia and the chronic fatigue syndrome, but the hepatitis I had already healed. Enough to know how to do it, and wanting to transfer that into animals because I have such a passion for animals.
Right. Okay. So, so there you met Gary. Now let's sort of tell the audience a bit about Gary's backstory as well. So, Gary was a physicist, and he became very, very ill. So let's lead it from there.
Okay. Gary was a very brilliant inventor and physicist, and he had developed multiple sclerosis, MS, and it had progressed to the point where he was a quadriplegic. He had very little feeling from the neck down, and the doctors, Western medicine, had told him that he had about 6 months to live. They said 2 years, but he really had less than 6 months, and there was nothing for him, and he was determined to survive, again, for his children. And he heard that the outback Aboriginals culture had remarkable healing gifts. So he went into the outback as a quadriplegic in his wheelchair, unloaded like cargo from the plane, and went into the Uluru area and was with this very remote outback tribe. And in 10 days' time, he regained feeling in his body, which he hadn't had in 7 years. And I believe they stopped the MS, and it totally transformed him in body, mind, and spirit. So he came back from that. This was in 94. He came out of the outback and decided the Aborigines had generously gifted their healing secrets. This is 60,000-year-old information that they hadn't given to the white man on purpose. And they gave it to Gary because they were told by the big guy, quote unquote, which is divine source, whatever you want to call it, that they were to give their healing secrets to this man. He would take it out into the world. So Gary came back from the outback totally transformed and got a doctor's degree in Doctor of Immunology so that he could practice what they had taught him. And he practiced what was new at that time called psychoneuroimmunology.
Right. Okay, let's back it up there just a little bit as well. This fascinating story. So how did Gary get to Australia, in the sense, who was his contact to contact him to let him know that this tribe would help him?
Yeah, good question. He was, he had just learned that he didn't have much time to live. The doctors had just told him that. And he went into a jazz bar to kind of soothe his soul. The man loved jazz. And he met a woman that night. It was very crowded. There was no place to sit. And he ended up sitting in next to a woman who was a naturopathic physician from Australia. And very uncharacteristically, he started to talk to her and tell his story. And she said, "I think I know someone who can help you." And she knew about this remote tribe. And even though they don't normally accept white people outside of their tribe to come in and help heal them, she just knew he was supposed to go and be with his tribe. So she gave Gary the contact number. One of the tribesmen, now this tribe, they're very small. This tribe was maybe 20 people. And one of the tribesmen spoke English and had an apartment in Brisbane because he had grown children that had moved to Brisbane. So he kind of had a foot in both worlds, the Aboriginal world and then the city of Brisbane. So when Gary contacted him with this phone number, Ray was his name, he said, "What took you so long? We've been waiting for you for 4 months." They already knew he was coming, and Gary just learned of them that week. They had already brought in a woman, a healer, who was part Aboriginal, part English, but she would be able to speak to him in English, and they were working for the last 4 months on metaphors to teach him their Aboriginal wisdom. They knew that was what they were supposed to be doing.
Right. So let's get this right. Okay. So they knew he was coming 4 months prior to him arriving.
Right. Which is amazing, but I mean, when I believe that the remote outback Aboriginals, some of them are just incredibly gifted and incredibly tuned in, and it's now the more I know about them, the more it doesn't surprise me that they knew he was coming.
That's incredible, and I think some of the things that startled him when he got there was that they spoke to each other telepathically.
Yes. It took him a little bit, and we describe all this in the book, Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, how he was thinking what a cute little girl was in front of him. And this little girl just all of a sudden just get the biggest smile and beamed. And that's when he was aware that, oh my gosh, they're aware of my thoughts. And to be honest, Kevin, when just kind of jumping ahead a little bit, Gary and I eventually married. I did not know Gary had developed the gift of telepathy for the first year of our marriage.
Right.
Which is kind of an interesting thing.
So here's a guy that, unless you can prove it, it doesn't exist. And
exactly.
he's gone into a completely alternative field because there was nothing else for him that science could help him with, and this healed him. Now, what is it they did that healed him? What knowledge did they give him that healed him?
Well, the tribe, he spent all day talking to this woman healer and she was helping him understand that the root of an illness starts as an emotional core, and that he had been really abused as a child. He had an alcoholic, abusive father, and Gary had gotten to the point where he had really learned how to numb himself emotionally really well, and that transferred into numbing himself physically and becoming a quadriplegic. So he had to understand that to forgive his father was really at the root of all of this, and that's when the healing really started. So, but what was also happening, I believe, is that the tribe, so even though he spent all day talking to this healer, and then he would spend the evenings talking to Ray, the other healer, the two that spoke English, the tribe, I believe, were sending a lot of healing energy to him, sending a lot of what the frequency and the vibration that he needed to really open up to this huge enlightenment and this big shift. Because this is a lot that happened in 10 days. I mean, for a man to go in who's a quadriplegic and has been for 7 years, and then to literally clumsily walk out, 10 days later, he went back on that plane ride home, kind of supporting himself on the backs of the airplane seats, but that was a totally different man. So there was a lot that happened during that 10 days, and everybody was involved.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, okay. So just to clarify it, then, let me get. Yeah. What is the basis then of the Aboriginals healing in the sense? I mean, have we covered it here? I mean,
Sure, sure. And this is why we put all this information in the book Secrets of Aboriginal Healing. We wanted to get that information out to people, and that's really what we've spent the rest of our lives doing, is getting this information in people's hands. The Aborigines wisely know. I don't know about your system in England, but here in the United States, the Western medicine tends to just work on the physical. That's what they're focused on. And the Aborigines wisely tell you that for anything can be healed, anything, when the body, mind, and spirit are aligned. And usually people don't address the emotional core. That's really where typically the illness will start. And also, is the soul aligned with healing? For me, and for most people, the soul is aligned with healing. It's just that they still have the emotional core there. This is why people will go in and have tumors removed that are cancerous, or they'll heal something and it comes right back again because they haven't changed the emotion, they haven't uprooted the emotional core. So this is where the Aborigines really helped us understand it's about getting to that emotional core that actually started in the first place. And if you keep ignoring that emotional root, it will progress and eventually become a physical disease. So for me, you could say, well, I had a blood transfusion. How does that, how is there an emotional root to the hepatitis C? But I wasn't taking care of myself. I was really ignoring my needs. I was stressed out to the max for a long time. And I had to change that emotional root and pull out that I was raised Catholic, and I have a lot of guilt that's part of my default mode. I don't even know it's running because it's just so comfortable for me. And I felt guilty taking care of myself. And so I had to let go of that and realize that's not serving me. And to, listen to my body.
right.
And my emotions.
So you would say now you're a lot more in tune with your life purpose. You're living it.
Totally. I meditate every day. I exercise every day. I eat fresh organic food, and it's much more balanced. I wasn't totally disconnected from my body. I would work all night long, feeding myself candy to get through the night. I mean, I was just totally not respecting or loving my body. And a lot of times these are warning signs about really, I mean, this may be different than what some people think, but I don't think that you fight the cancer. I think the cancer is a messenger, and you want to pay attention to what's behind that, and bring it back into balance again. Find out what emotions are creating these problems. It's very predictable. If you have an autoimmune disease, which I did, fibromyalgia, that tends to usually happen when you have a lot of fear running throughout your whole system. It's very specific. If you have, for instance, a knee problem on the left side, I believe there's a female, you have a problem with a female. I mean, it's very specific where here's what I think Kevin will help people understand. When you have an emotion, depending on the emotion, it creates a different kind of cell. And Dr. Emoto's water experiments showed us how if you have a fear-based emotion, anger, resentment, guilt, it's a different cell. It doesn't hold as much light, and it's very sticky and gunky, and it's very dense, and it doesn't hold much life force. And if you keep, for instance, having a lot of heart issues where you're just grieving and you constantly grieve and you don't release that, you are building up a lot of gunky cells in this area, and the energy is not flowing. And if you have a propensity for breast cancer or heart disease, you really need to be aware of that. And it becomes toxic to the body. It's not that there's anything wrong with, having these emotions, but just be aware of my releasing them. And the beautiful side, the flip side, is when you have a love-based emotion, joy, gratitude, it's a different cell. Dr. Emoto showed us how it's just this beautiful snowflake looking, highly efficient, holds and draws a lot of light to it, and also really promotes the flow of energy. So gratitude is one of the best emotions to have to heal something. That will really promote healing. And it's a beautiful thing to be doing more often anyway. So that's what people have to pay attention to, is what kind of emotions are they marinating in on a regular basis, because it's creating energy, it's creating cells, and at some point the body can no longer hold on to that toxicity, and it creates a physical problem. That's a
Yo,
mouthful.
no,
I
no,
gave you
no,
a
that's
lot.
fantastic. So by coming to someone like you, where we can describe what we're going through, you can sort of say, well, this is what I think that is causing that problem, or this is what that problem is related to. Because, if I've got a bad back, for example, I'd find it difficult without going into myself. But if I was just if I wasn't very spiritual in a sense, and I've got a bad back, I would find it very difficult to know, well, what emotionally would that be. But I suppose after you talk to the patient and you get down to it, you'll find what the root cause is really.
Well, and they're very common, Kevin. So that, for instance, the back would be divided, even actually by the vertebrae, but lower back, and I'm not saying this is where you have your issues, but I'm just saying typically, almost always, the lower back problem is related to finances, because it's also related to that chakra, that base chakra. And so I can't tell you how many times I have people that come to me and they have lower back issues. And when we start relieving the emotional components around finances, it just relieves that and goes away. And that, in fact, some people are surprised to see that it just goes away overnight.
Right. But this is my point, though. I mean, how would we know that? I mean, it takes someone like yourself, or is this listed in the book? That this particular health issue could equal this.
It's not. The different emotions are not listed in the book, but a lot of this information is becoming more known. If you did a search on the internet, for instance, most people they know that we tend to hold anger in the liver. Most people tend to know that. When you feel grief, you feel it in the heart area. You can feel that. When you feel tense and nervous, you can feel it in your gut. And so you start paying attention to, what kind of emotions am I having? Because it's and if you have an autoimmune disease, usually that's a lot of fear. And it's you've managed to create a problem with the entire body.
Yeah.
You're holding a lot of fear in your cells. And here's something that's interesting. Well, and just to let you know, when I work with clients, since I've have gone down this spiritual path after almost dying twice, it kind of put me on this path of, why am I here? Why did I survive such slim odds? I discovered that, and Gary did too. This was huge for Gary when he went into the outback, discovered that he has a guardian angel with him named Julie. And he came back from the outback and started spending hours every day communicating with Julie, and ended up becoming a phenomenal healer because he was working with Julie and she was working through him. And that's actually how I fell in love with him, is he healed one of my sisters who was going blind, and it was an incurable disease, and he healed her in 4 days. And that's when somebody flipped the switch. I instantly fell in love with him. But what I've also learned over the years is that everybody has a guide, a spirit guide, a guardian angel. Everybody does. But depending on what you're doing, you'll have more that may come and go. If you have an autistic child, you may have a few more that come in and assist. Or if you're in a very high political position and you need more guidance, you'll have a bigger team. When I have a client come to me, I ask them ahead of time, what do you have physically that you want healed? And then I will meditate and get clarity from my beautiful healing team of spirit guides on what those specific emotional cores are for that particular person.
Right.
And then help them have that awareness, and then help them turn it around and uproot it so they can. It's about learning how to use that mind in a very powerful way rather than sabotage it.
Absolutely. That's great. So you're able to go into meditation, go into that space and connect with your guides, and they then will give you the information about which emotional areas it is that need healing in order to cure whatever the client has come to you with in that sense. Wow. Okay. So spirit guides play a big part for all of us, and if we would just gave ourselves that time to connect to a potential spirit guide, then it could be very healing in that moment, depending what we're suffering from.
I think that's huge. And to be honest, we're writing a third book about it, how to contact your guardian angel, because so many people don't recognize everyone has a spirit guide with them 24/7, every moment from the time they're born until the time they pass. And that we're designed exactly the way we need to be for this journey, but we also have all the help we need on the other side of the veil. And then, but because it's a free will planet, they're not going to just step in. You have to ask for assistance. So you can ask your spirit guides, your, whoever that is for you, divine creator, ancestors, ascended masters, totem animals, guardian angels, whatever it might be for you. It's a higher consciousness than the mind. Ask for assistance, ask for healing, ask for an awareness of what your emotional core is. You don't have to be doing this alone. And that's where most people get into trouble, is they try to do everything alone, and the mind was not designed to be in charge doing it alone. The mind was designed to be an assistant to the soul, following the guidance from a higher consciousness, if you will, following the guidance from your higher self or soul or guardian angel, but definitely not behind the wheel on 24/7. That's where we get into trouble. So if you want to heal something, and there's a lot of information up on my website about this, because it's my passion to help people recognize most of us are not supposed to be getting sick. It's just that our bodies can't handle this emotional weight. And my passion is waking people up to the fact that you have amazing healing gifts. Your body wants to heal. If you cut or bruise yourself, the body knows how to heal. So you got to figure out where you're blocking it. So we put a lot of information up on that website for people to learn how to heal themselves, take their power back, and recognize where they've been getting into trouble, and also how to avail yourself of the tremendous help from the other side of the veil. That's huge.
Okay, and just remind us of your website.
It's holzwellness.com. HOLZ as in zebra, WELLNESS.com. There's all kinds of free webinars and blogs and a lot of information to help people.
No, I think your work is just absolutely amazing. I really do love it. And so really, to sum up what you've been saying, some of our most painful experiences are some of the best tools to teach us.
Exactly. That's what Gary learned when he was in the outback. There was a couple things that, he was a scientist, he was a physicist, and it was pretty much black and white. If you, like you said earlier, if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist. And I think that's one of the things that he said the outback changed in him the most, was the Aboriginal culture helped him understand that there's a lot of gray that cannot be seen or proven, but it exists nonetheless, including his spirit guide that he started coming back and working with tremendously. When he came back from the outback, he started developing the same abilities that the Aborigines were exhibiting. He all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but he very quickly started being telepathic to everything, started being able to see chakras spinning. He could look inside a body and see tumors and the stage that they were at and what cancer looked like. When he looked at somebody, their skin was transparent to him, which was a little disturbing, but he finally got used to that. And he was colorblind, which I think might have been a blessing. I think it might have been a bit much. So
yeah, he could see through patients.
He could see through their skin. Their skin was transparent to him, and it didn't matter. He could see that in a crowd or people having dinner with us. He couldn't turn that off. He could also see their chakras spinning and their auras, and for instance, how many tumors they had in their colon. These are just the things that developed after he had his experience with the Aboriginal culture in the outback.
Now, has anybody gone that is anybody else working with this tribe and taking these the teaching principles and healing principles away with them to go do work as you're doing?
That's a good question. I know that typically they don't have anything to do with the white person because they're very remote and they are very nomadic. And I did understand Gary said that they had given this information to a Chinaman, I think a generation before. And I don't know what happened with that information, and so as far as I know, they only gave it to that Chinaman and then they gave it to Gary because they were told to give it to Gary. They were resistant initially about giving away their healing wisdom, this ancient information. But when they understood it was the big guy telling them that we needed this information because we really didn't understand how healing worked, then they were very happy to generously give this information because they will tell you that we really don't know how healing works, and it's a body, mind, spirit. It's an alignment of all three of those. And we're not really understanding about the core, the emotional root to an illness. So they think that we tend to be a bit chaotic, these civilized tribes, if you will, where they're very quiet and simple and they're very present. We are just, our minds are constantly chattering and all over the place. And so they had a lot of beautiful wisdom to teach us. And the more I live what they have been teaching us, the better my life gets. The simpler it gets, and the connection to this higher frequency, the information on the other side, gets stronger and stronger all the time. It's beautiful. It's beautiful wisdom.
Okay, now have you been back yourself to see this tribe?
I did. I ended up going back after Gary passed in 2007. This was 12 years after the doctors had given him his death sentence, not the 6 months that they had initially told him. And I was invited a year after he passed to be part of women's ceremonies with Aboriginal women. The women wanted to start opening up their ceremonies and to other cultures. And because I was teaching this already, I was invited. There were probably about a dozen women from all over the world. Maybe 20 of us were invited from all over. And I went with a friend of mine from the United States. And we were participating in ceremonies. We didn't know what was really going on. There was a culture, there was a language barrier. We did have one person who spoke English, who was kind of the liaison, but you could feel the energy building over the week, and it kept building and building to the point where we ended up creating thunderstorms. We were told that the white women had added enough energy that we created really powerful thunderstorms that area had not seen in, I think, at least 5 years. So these thunderstorms, and we didn't, the white women had no idea this is what was going to happen. And so these thunderstorms were so powerful, they just kept coming and circling the camp and just circling around for hours, and our sleeping bags were just drenched. We had no idea that was going to happen. So that's a memory maker for sure. Cold desert with a wet sleeping bag. But these ceremonies were so powerful, and I can't disclose the ceremonies, but I can tell you that some of the experiences I had, at one point I could feel, you know how you know that we're all one and that we're all connected. This is one of the things that the Aborigines have to teach us. The Aborigines live that. And when in one of the ceremonies, I could actually feel it. I could see how everything sort of melded together. It was, we described that in the second book, Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening. The experiences that I had during those ceremonies with the outback tribe, it was pretty phenomenal experiences for me. Now, the men did not participate in that. They were holding the energy. These were so powerful, we needed them to be grounding us. And so they were at another undisclosed location, grounding us and keeping us safe during these ceremonies.
And when you went to Australia the first time, what was that experience like? Because obviously, you've got the major populated areas, but you were traveling right in the outback, quite a distance.
Yeah, and initially, when I first got there into the outback, I wished, looking back on it, I should have acclimated myself to Australia a little bit more, because it feels like you've landed on Mars. Everything is red. The dirt is red. The outback desert is really harsh. It's a really tough environment, and I just can't believe that these people live out there. It's astonishing to me. And when I got there, it was really kind of, it was overload. It was just too much. You can't touch any kind of wood, it'll splinter off in your hands because it's been baking in this intense heat. And there's all kinds of insects and just waves of just annoying insects every hour, something different. And then at night, it's absolutely freezing. And we had one of the first nights we were there, my mate from the United States, we had built a fire, and we had a tarantula show up that was the size of a dinner plate. Its body was the size of your fist. I mean, the desert, the outback, is got wild pigs and wild camels running around, and snakes that are the most poisonous, and spiders that are the most poisonous. So I remember this first night in my sleeping bag thinking, what are you doing here? You really should have thought this through more, or a little bit, really paid attention to what's going on here. And then I heard a plane overhead, and I just remember feeling a sense of relief that this civilization was not too far, not terribly far. So that was a little comforting. But we made it, and it was incredibly enriching in so many ways. And we describe that in the Secrets of Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening, because there's just way too much to talk about here.
Did you feel there was lots of vortexes in the area that you were in?
I'm sorry, I couldn't. You cut out on that one, Kevin. Could you say that again?
Did you feel that there was lots of vortexes in the area that you were in?
And we were near Uluru, Ayers Rock, very, very sacred vortex. And Gary, I believe, was in the same area around Uluru. And I'll have to tell you, the first night I got to Uluru, and Uluru Ayers Rock has turned into a real vacation. There's a lot of people from all over the world that now go there as a destination site, which is a bit sad, since Uluru is this sacred site to the Aborigines, and now there's people, tourists climbing all over it. But the first night I was there at the hotel, before I went into the desert, that Uluru is such a vortex, such a strong vortex of energy. When I was at the hotel, this was really an eye-opener for me. There were so many UFOs flying all over Uluru, because the energy is like a moth going to the light. And the tourists were sitting outside at night at the hotel in their lounge chairs, flashing their flashlights at them, because there were so many of them. It was just a very interesting experience. I have noticed that in other locations as well. When I went to France, we were near Rennes-le-Château, which is very famous. And there's a tremendous vortex of energy there. And I had been told that there's a lot of UFO sightings because of the energy in that area as well. But Uluru is one of the strongest, I think.
So when you were with this tribe, would you say that they potentially could have come from some other civilization like the Atlanteans?
I believe, and I can't prove this, but I believe that the Aboriginals are part of the Lemurian, not Atlantis, but Lemurian.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's just sort of what I have been guided to believe. That's not something that they've told us, but it could be Atlanteans. I'm not sure. It's one or the other, but they are definitely some of the descendants of that.
Right. I thought there might be something very, very deep about these people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're the oldest continuous culture on the planet, and they've been around a long time, and the wisdom of 60,000 years is tremendous. And especially when and they're not all this way, but when you talk about the remote enlightened ones, they're operating at a higher frequency, a different dimension. I sort of think that they're operating in fifth dimensional existence. And that's why when Gary was out in the outback with them, he thought, and we talk about that in the book too, the first one about the secrets of Aboriginal healing, he'd see them staring off into space, and initially for hours. And initially he thought they just weren't very bright. And then he came to realize they're off in Dreamtime, they're meditating, whatever you want to call it. They are connecting to these other realms. They are connecting to these other dimensions. And the Aborigines will tell you that is much more real than what we think is real. This reality is really an illusion. And what they're doing is going off into these other dimensions. They're becoming they know how to shape shift. They can become the bird. They're actually practicing quantum physics. That's what they say. We civilized tribes don't really know how to use our subconscious mind. We're not really creating. We're just sort of letting our mind have its way with us. We're not really controlling and focusing on what we want. And so they're using what we would call quantum physics. They're creating. They're creating and they're directing the illusion. And they'll tell you that we civilized tribes don't tend to do that. We don't really, our minds control us rather than us controlling our minds. And the mind is one of the most powerful tools on the planet. We just have to learn how to use it. And the Aborigines know how to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you went there, then I guess it was an amazing experience for you, because being around these people, it must have opened up your psychic abilities, your third eye, your intuitive side.
Exactly. I think that's why I had some of the experiences that I did, including feeling tremendous love from Mother Earth, from Gaia, being able to feel that, being able to really not just intellectually know it, but to feel the oneness, to feel that we were all connected. You've got to be at a higher frequency, a higher vibration to be able to actually feel that. And all the spontaneous enlightenment that happened when we were in the outback. And I believe that the ceremonies and the Aborigines were doing it with Gary, and they were doing it with us. They're raising that frequency. They're directing energy. They're bringing you the energies from these ceremonies, kept building and building so that we could reach that point of enlightenment and then take that information out into the world, which is what we've done in the first and the second book.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have, and it's a great book. Especially when you get down to the root of illnesses as well. Oh God, so many questions here.
And I think, Kevin, that what will save us ultimately on this planet is when we become enlightened, when we move into these higher frequencies, these higher vibrations, this higher expression of love, which is what these particular tribes were that we were encountering. There's so much about being of service. There's so much about love. There's no competition. They don't even have a word. They don't even have a possessive word. There is no my. That's not something that they don't even have a language for that. They just share. It's a different way of thinking. And this is what we are moving to be able to survive and to move into these higher frequencies.
Yeah, completely agreed. And just looking at some of the patients that come see yourself as well, do all of them want to be cured?
Well, that's one of the steps, one of the 5 steps to Aboriginal healing is, are you willing to be healed? Because some people, they have issues. There's a secondary gain. And the people that come to see me, and I just need 1 hour with them. I just need a 1-hour consult to help them have an awareness. And it's up to them. I give them an awareness of what's been going on to create the problem. And then I teach them how to change that. And then I also teach them how to bring in tremendous help from the other side. Now it's up to them whether they choose to do that or not. But most people who come to me, they've reached that point where they've got to make some changes, and they know it, and they just don't know how. And so most people are willing. Now, are they willing? And for the most part, most people are willing to turn these emotions and these mindsets around, not just to heal everything, and they just don't know how to do it. So that's where we are providing the information in as many ways as we can.
Well, let's just look at some of these steps as well of Aboriginal healing. I believe, well, I might be wrong here, but focus, becoming aware. Well, you tell us, yeah.
Sure. You want me to go through the 5 steps?
Sorry, yes, please.
Yes, okay. And we talk about this in much more detail in Secrets of Aboriginal Healing. The first step that you've already pointed out very wisely, Kevin, is willingness. Are you willing to get better? Are you willing to make some changes? How bad does it have to get before you're willing to change? And usually pain's a pretty good motivator. The second step is having an awareness. There is a reason that this is in your life. It's part of your soul's growth and journey. If you have a hard time accepting something and you're challenged by it and your body starts exhibiting that, you need to have an awareness of what's going on, what the emotional core is, what mindsets and emotions are creating the problem. The third step is acceptance. You may not like it, but it's here for a reason. It's here to help you in the big picture, just as Gary's MS, he would tell people that being in that wheelchair was the biggest blessing of his life. It just totally transformed him in such wonderful ways. So the acceptance, it's here for a reason. Your illness can hold a gift for you if you are willing to be open to that. The fourth step you mentioned, empowerment, take your power back. It doesn't matter what other people have told you. If you align that body, mind, and spirit with healing, anything can be healed. And so I had to just ignore what the doctor said to me and know that there's got to be other answers. And there's a lot of answers out there. And that's the same thing Gary experienced. So take your power back, empowerment. And the fifth step is focus. Focus only on what you want. And this is where the Aborigines will tell us. We tend to put a lot of focus and energy and emotion into what we don't want. And that's exactly what we're creating. So if you're putting a lot of focus on the pain, or the disease, then that's what you're creating in a disease. It's a different outlook. It's a different focus.
Okay, and we're getting to the top of the hour here as well. So, you and Gary set up the Holz Wellness. This is prior to Gary passing. Just explain to us, just very briefly, what is the Holz Wellness?
Holz Wellness,
and how people can get in contact with yourself as well.
Sure. Holz Wellness is set up to help people recognize how to thrive in body, mind, and spirit, how to heal themselves, how to really find that joy, that passion, and that soul's intention and journey. So they can go to holzwellness.com, www.holz as in zebra, wellness.com, holzwellness.com. And there's information there, a lot of information on the blog. There's webinars, there's all kinds of things up there to help people recognize how they can heal and just get that information out there. And I encourage people to share it and help as many people as we can, and that will help each other and heal the planet as well.
Now, people can get in contact with yourself via Skype or via telephone internationally?
They can email me at Robbie at holzwellness.com, and that's ROBBIE at holzwellness.com. And my number here in the Seattle area is 425-967-5514.
Now, do you ever plan on going back to meet the tribe again in the future, or have you been back more recently?
I have not. I suspect that they're remote for a reason. That I don't see that. I would love to be actually be invited again to participate, and I have been, but I have not been able to go back. I suspect it'll be another year before I go back, and I don't know whether they'll be doing ceremonies then or not. But fingers crossed. That would be an awesome experience.
Absolutely. And do you feel that you're still in contact with Gary?
Oh, absolutely. He's part of my healing team. He knew he was going to be leaving, and he came to me a year before he was leaving, and we go into this in the Awakening book. And he left a year later. But what I did not expect is he was going to show up every morning from the other side after he had passed. He's a big part of the assistance from the other side. He's part of the healing team. Yeah, very much involved.
That's absolutely wonderful. That really is. Okay, now I know we've been struggling here with internet connection, and I hate cutting interviews short, but I just know that I'm tempting fate here right now, with the internet being this good. But if you could just give us a sort of closing message to the audience, what would you say is the most important message of your work?
I think that the most important message is for people to recognize that chances are they can heal. That most of us are not supposed to be getting sick. Our bodies are just crumbling under the emotional weight. So pay attention to what kind of cells you're creating? Is it love-based or fear-based? And what kind of energy or emotions you're running through you, because it affects not just your body, but it affects everyone around you. So yes, there's tremendous hope, tremendous hope. I almost died, and I have totally healed everything. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting this information out there. A lot of the healing realms, especially here in the United States, is a big business. Take your power back and realize your body knows how to heal itself. It wants to heal itself. Just assist it and stop blocking it.
Well, Robbie Holz, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.